Hey, sorry for the interruption, but we wanted to let you know that this week's episode is brought to you by Spotify for Podcasters. Really cool app. Josiah and I use it for every single show that we bring to you every week. You can edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so you can start creating as soon as you log into the platform. You can easily distribute your podcasts to Spotify and everywhere else the podcasts are heard, just like we do every single week. You can also create video podcasts on Spotify, which is really cool. And of course, you can earn money like I'm doing right now by including ads and even podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free. There's no catch. We really love it. We use it every single week. So we encourage you to go download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started. All right, let's get back to the show.
Radical! Welcome to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. Each week, join the gnarly Travis and Josiah as they provide insight into the print on demand industry and equip you with the totally tubular tools, advice, and strategies you need to achieve success and hopefully have a few laughs along the way. Now on to this week's Totally Tubular Show.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to episode 61. Well, not welcome back to episode 61. Welcome back to the Print on Demand Cast, and we're on episode 61. Joining me, as always, as I kick my microphone across the room, podcast professionals. Travis, how's it going, man? How's things going? And how did you think last week's episode was received, our interview with Chris Grant?
I am doing well. I thought the interview was fun last week. Had some people say that they appreciated it, and yeah, it was a good one. It's always fun to get somebody's perspective that's like not necessarily in the same industry, not doing the same stuff that we're doing every day. And Chris has got a lot of good insight, so it was fun. How are you guys doing over there? I see you're actually in your apartment, not at What For Apparel, but how's What For Apparel doing?
And man, we're doing well, staying busy as always, and just keeping things cranking, man. I know Q4 is coming up, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show, but just kind of laying the groundwork for things to come. And we were talking about today, like if this is, we have a couple clients that are doing a lot of volume. If this is their non-holiday volume, I can't imagine what holiday volume is going to be like and the amount of help we're going to need. Which is, seasonal help. If you have your own production facility or you've worked in any kind of workforce job, seasonal help is a real thing, especially for like sales and retail sales and stuff like that. They always kind of bulk up for Q4. How about you guys at Make Your Mark, man? How's things going over there? How's the 3070 treating you?
Loving the 3070. Had a delay on our conveyor dryer, so now I'm trying to jump through some hoops and potentially get a different one that can be here sooner.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember we talked about you getting the one sooner. I thought you meant there was a delay on the one that you thought you could get sooner, but you're talking about the original one. There's the delay.
Yeah. So we still have a little bit of a kind of a bottleneck when we're curing the shirts because we're trying to cure with a hover press. And as opposed to a conveyor dryer. And so it just, takes a little longer because that printer prints so fast and it prints so beautifully, by the way, as an aside, but prints so fast that it just overwhelms our presses. So today though, actually, cause we're probably not going to get our conveyor dryer for another couple of weeks, even the one that I got like after the fact.
Sure.
But today we figured out a way to convert one of our other presses to be able to hover. So the idea behind that is when you're curing a shirt, it comes out of the printer and you need to cure it, which basically just means apply heat to where the ink will set into the fabrics and not bleed or not wash out, when you put it in the wash. And it requires heat, but that garment is wet. So you don't want to put that pressure, like a full on heat press on it and just because you'll rub that ink and your platen, the top platen will get all, nasty with ink over time. And maybe on your next print, you actually put that down and, some of that ink wasn't totally dry and it comes out on the second shirt and it's, it just can be bad. So you try to use a hover press, but when you use a hover press, you don't have the full heat, that you would if you
Sure.
really pressed it down. And so it takes a little longer to actually cure those garments really well with, if you're using a hover. So it just creates a bottleneck, but now we'll have at least 2 to do that with, that will really, really, obviously it doubles or divides in 2 the amount of time you have to cure it. So that'll be good. Still really excited to get that conveyor and just get it up and running, and probably take another picture or 2 for the Facebook group once, we've got that in and everything's settled. But we're seeing a definite increase in orders from both ourselves and from our clients. I think, you were saying we're coming into Q4, and it's funny because we say that because when we think of Q4, we think of, November and December, mainly December,
right?
Q4 is actually right now.
Technically, we're already in Q4, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
So we're definitely already seeing kind of some of that crazy time increase, because it does slowly tick up, I think, all the way through October, and then all the way through early November. And then once Thanksgiving hits, it's just a mad dash to the end of the year. So, so we are seeing some of that those early increases in orders, which is good. We hired another DTG guy, so we've now got a full staff. Now I went to and I know you just asked how we're doing, but on the topic of temporary workers, I did a job fair here recently, and went out last Monday, a week ago. And, for a couple hours, and met some people and got a list of people together that were looking for, some jobs. I don't know how many of them are really actually interested, because you kind of just play nice in those things.
Right.
But hopefully, maybe we'll get a person or 2 out of that. And then we've got some other ads running. We're just trying to get some temporary workers, because we're definitely going to need them come, middle of November into December for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And like I said, we'll get into that more in this week's main event of the podcast. But before we go there, before we go to the point of interest, before we go anywhere else, we always have to start things off correctly with this week's weekly dad joke.
Time for the weekly dad joke.
We do a lot of dad jokes, Travis. And you listening, you know that we do a lot of dad jokes. Last week, we had a dad joke connoisseur on, and gave what to this day is probably the best dad joke that I've ever delivered or read. That was last week.
It's pretty good.
But here's
last week.
Here's a little.
Go back and listen if you didn't hear it.
Yeah. No, you should. You should go back and listen, because it was epic. But we wanted to kind of break down the mechanics of a dad joke, because there, of course, is the reasoning behind everything. So my question to you, Travis, my question to the listener would be, when does a joke become a dad joke?
I don't know. When does a joke become a dad joke?
When it becomes apparent. And that's this week's weekly dad joke. You are all very welcome. Congratulations to the dad joke. It's a beautiful baby boy. I think that's great. So
that was quite the setup.
We're going to move
for that joke.
I know. It was a long way to go for a short dad joke, but that's
we're getting more and more elaborate.
You got to switch up the approach, because they're just waiting for joke punchline, and then I went and divulged into this whole, pseudo soliloquy about the reasoning and the meaning behind dad jokes, and saying $10 words like soliloquy. So, speaking of $10 words, this week's point of interest is some $10 words that are also niches, I would say. So, let's go into this week's point of interest.
Point of interest.
Travis, we found a list before we pressed record of top 1,000 niches. Top 1,000 niches. And just
for T-shirts, specifically for T-shirts.
Yes, specifically for T-shirts. And we learned some things, I think.
So you could call them, it's where you said Tiches. And I was like, oh, yeah, it's a Tiche. It's a t-shirt niche. It's a Tiche.
It's a Tiche. Yes. And that there's t-shirt niches, Tiche, there's quilt niches, quiche. I mean, it goes round
deep.
and round. It goes deep. But we learned some things about some potential niches that you need to be aware of, you, the listener. Of course, we know the basics, right? Well, what are some like well-known niches, Travis? Like there's like nurses, right?
Yep.
Teachers. Like what else is some niches that we talk about a lot here on the show?
Like mechanics or
Sure.
like you said, like teachers or, there's sports niches, you could, basketball players, football players, soccer players, obviously don't want to, cross the line with teams and such, but, people enjoy those types of activities, anything pretty much like magicians, tech support stuff. There's a lot of really good niches you can get into.
Yeah.
This list though, it takes it to a whole new level.
It does. It takes it to a level that I didn't even know was necessary until I read this. But what Travis and I are going to do is we're going to just look at this list. Maybe we can even provide you the link in the show notes because there is a pro version of this list that offers some actual data as far as, the validity and traffic and search volume and stuff like that on different e-commerce platforms that you can actually purchase. But we're just going to go to this list and we're just going to riff a little bit on some niches that you didn't know existed. For example, there is a hoe niche. Mm-hmm.
A hoe niche.
Heavy equipment operator. So if you have a hoe in your life, you can make a t-shirt for them. And I think that's. Hoes need shirts too.
They do. Here's one. I'm just going to let that one go. I'm not going to continue on down that path. I like the Tiche of mushroom hunting. That's a thing. Like people hunt mushrooms. And so of course they would need a t-shirt when they're actually mushroom hunting. I thought that was really interesting that's one of the top 1,000 in t-shirt sales.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Mushroom hunting is an actual Tiche that you can get involved in. I think the other one that I think is interesting is lapidary, relating to stones and gems and the work involved in engraving, cutting, or polishing them. So if you have a rock collector or a rock enthusiast or a lapidariist, that's a word that I just made up, use that in your keywords, boys and girls. The lapidary niche. You always need shirts to talk about how much geology rocks. Am I right? There you go. There's a shirt idea for you. There are so many. Lucid dreaming is a niche for all those lucid dreamers in your life.
Organ donors. If you're an organ donor, you might as well just wear it on a t-shirt. So if you do get into that's not a bad idea. And you're dead and you can't really talk, because when you're dead, you can't really talk. They don't even have to go for your wallet and see, you see your license. If you're an organ donor, they just read it on your t-shirt and just start harvesting.
In fact, here's a t-shirt idea. Just outline of where all the organs are in the abdomen. So if it says organ donor, and then should you get a paramedic that's, new, there's just like a cut along the dotted line.
A little dotted line
going on there. So I think that could work well. Of course, Braille, I don't know really how to approach that one.
That's tough.
I feel like the people who use Braille wouldn't really appreciate a shirt. That's just a first blush theory. But Braille, hey, that's
okay. It's on there.
It's a niche. It's on the list. If it's on the list, it's got to be true.
I thought this was interesting. Redheads. That's an actual niche that you can get into. You could, as if somebody could, like was having a hard time recognizing if your hair was red or not, you just tell them with a t-shirt,
Yeah. I feel like, or maybe redheads are your type. There's 1% to 2% of the population that is an actual redhead. So that is a sub niche, a sub Tiche, if you will. But the worm farming is a niche.
Worm farming. Yep. Yeah. And as I was saying when we first saw this, and for every taxi driver that There's also probably a taxidermist that you
Yeah.
know. Both
Yep.
quality Tiches.
Yes, quality. Funeral directors. You know, I think it's well known that funeral directors love a good novelty T-shirt when they are directing such services. So, you know, but seriously, guys, this list is ridiculously extensive with stuff that, like we're saying here, I wouldn't have had a reason to think. You know, a sausage shirt, a saw machine niche, a saw. So dog agility is a niche.
Agility.
Dog agility, that is a real thing. Ripperology is a niche. The fascination with Jack the Ripper, and there's also a serial killer niche. So some of these are concerning that they actually had to put these in a Tiche list, because that's just a little dark. So, guys, we will put this link in the notes. Go check it out. Seriously though, because you might think of some ideas. Maybe you know some T-shirt ideas, and you can plug in some keywords, research some more. And if you're looking to just kind of expand and appeal to a wide group of people, this list might actually be useful, especially coming up to Q4, because it's a gift season, right? So the main reason we wanted to talk about this list and kind of put it out there was, as you're listing stuff to sell in Q4, which you should have already been doing, of course, preempting things to be listed and sold. But this will kind of give you a good place to start when you're thinking of, man, what other shirts could I do? What else is there to make, or what could I appeal to? So check out that link. What did you think, Travis, about this ridiculously in-depth Tiche list?
Yeah, I think it's awesome, just because, I mean, we are in a industry, at least a lot of us doing print on demand, we're in an industry where most of the products we give we create are for gifts. And so it makes sense to have this kind of list, to spur our imagination, spur our creativity, and perhaps come up with some things that we weren't necessarily thinking before. I mean, I pride myself on having a lot of, a very broad, selection of niches with my products, but this goes even beyond that. And so I'm actually going to give this to our VA, who specifically researches new designs and new design ideas, and say, hey, put some of this in the Google machine and see what comes up, and maybe we'll come up with some great stuff for, helicopter niche, or the gun control niche, or the windsurfing niche, or the wood carving niche. I mean, there's a lot of them that perhaps we've never considered. So, So it's always good to find things like that can really jog your creativity and give you a kickstart there, for sure.
Yeah. And if anything else, is just educational, because did you know that there's a pastel goth niche? I mean, I don't know what a pastel goth is, but it is a thing. And we're always trying to educate you, the listeners. So, as they say, the more you know. You're all very welcome for this educational moment. So with that, we're going to put this list to bed, the Tiche list, and the link will be there in the show notes for you to peruse. And if you find one that's interesting, or if you know what a pastel goth is, hit us up in the group. Let us know. I'm genuinely curious when I say that. printondemandcast.com/Facebook, and let us know your favorite Tiche, or if you like the word Tiche. We like it, obviously, because we keep using it. So with that, we're going to go to this week's main event.
Main event, 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 main event.
All right, Travis, we've kind of alluded to it, but let's talk about what this week's main event is, and why we decided to kind of do there's annual checkups for your health. Well, this is kind of an annual checkup, the Print on Demand Cast annual checkup.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like you said, you go into a doctor, you get a checkup or whatever. We are going to do a checkup for you on your Q4 preparation, or your holiday rush preparation, because as we've been alluding to this whole episode, sales are just going to continue to climb and climb and climb. And then as soon as, Black Friday hits, Thanksgiving right there, right around that spot, it's going to do a hockey stick, on the chart as far as orders go. And, the big question is, are you ready? And I hope you have been getting ready, because here we are halfway through October already. There are some things that it's probably almost too late to do, but I think there are still some things that you should at least be thinking about if you're not already, and be prepared for. So with that said, What's our first one, Josiah?
Yeah, so the first one we're going to talk about is order flow. We've talked about this a lot in previous episodes, but the question is, do you have a good system for processing your orders? Because whether you do or whether you don't, the reality is that rubber will meet the road November, December, and you will come out of December thinking, yeah, that was a good system for orders. And yes, we did build that to what we needed it to be. Or the flip side of that coin is, holy crap, we need to retool the entire thing, because Q4 just blew this, burst everything at the seams, blew the doors off of this thing. And we've got to figure out how to make it better. One of the ways to always think about that, another thing we've talked about is to build for where you want to be, not necessarily for where you are. So if you're building and kind of forecasting the order, this process, or any really process in your business for the sales volume in July, well, it's not going to be the same. You have to kind of forecast out to, if you've never done a Q4 before, reach out to people who have been through a Q4, ask them, do some research, get some advice. If you have done a Q4, learn from that Q4 and understand that the idea is for this Q4 to be more successful than the last Q4. So you can still even expand upon what you did for the last one. So always future cast and kind of forecast where you think you're going to be and build a solution for that time instead of playing catch up, because you lose out on a lot of profitability, a lot of orders, a lot of opportunity when you're playing catch up. If you want to know more about the order flow that we talked about, it was episode 16 in the archives. I always want to say that. Go check it out in the archives. Episode 16 in the Podcast archives, order flows, where we talked all about that and the importance of having an important order flow. Another thing to think about as well in this is custom orders. Custom is huge, especially if you're doing stuff on Etsy, your own websites, whatever. But for holidays, custom is awesome. People want custom items for gifts. But how is it processed? How is it collected? How do you get the art? Is bulk different from, than 1 or 2 per day? What does that system look like? So Travis, what are some thoughts before I throw to you again for number 2? What are some thoughts on this order flow thing? Kind of fill in the gaps here from what I've said, as far as the importance of making sure that this thing is robust enough to handle the volume that you want to anticipate for in a Q4.
Yeah. Obviously, it's going to depend on whether or not you're doing all of your orders in-house, or if you're, drop shipping these orders, sending them off to somebody else to fulfill for you. But it's still vitally important. It's interesting that the order flow episode 16 that we did last year literally was published December 9th. So it was probably somewhat of a reactionary.
Exactly. It was
podcast.
A reflex. Yeah. We need to talk about this, because I'm hurting right now.
I just think that's interesting. I'm actually probably going to go listen to it at some point here in the next week, just to kind of hear what we were saying and what we were thinking about orders. One of the things that, you talk about custom orders, and that there's an inherent part of the custom order which contains the customer service element, because you have to collect that custom art from your client. Now, there's 2 different kinds of, I guess, custom can be, you can systematize it to where, you can only customize it with certain things, to where, to where I'm still building the art, but I'm just basically piecing it together, and we can internalize that. And you can put all of that kind of in your order. So when you get it, you have all of the data that you need to actually process that. But there are limitations with Etsy. You can only have certain number of fields that they can actually fill in, and et cetera, et cetera. Amazon is the same way. There are some limitations that if you want to really go beyond that, there are going to have to be some, connections with your customers, some emails or some messages or whatever. And so how is that going to be when instead of 1 or 2 a day, now you've got 10 or 20 a day, and you're still working a full-time job, and you got to come back and you've got to get all that data, because what happens is, you get home and you're like tired or whatever, and you go online, you're like, oh my gosh, I have 20 orders I need to get all of the data for. And so you send out all those emails, and then you're tired and you're going to go back to work the next day. And then you come home and you have another 20 that you have to get all this stuff for. But then you also have all of the answers to the 20 from the day before, but only 15 answered. So you still have 5 that you're waiting for, but the clock's still ticking. So, I mean, there's just all of these things that you need to think through. And if you're going to have that kind of volume where every single day you're going to have, 20, 30, 40 orders coming in, and you're going to have to connect with your customer about those, it may be time to bring somebody else on. It might be time to train a virtual assistant to help you manage some of that. Just, hey, virtual assistant, every time an order comes in, I want you to send out the initial email that says, hey, this is the data I need to collect. And I want you to monitor that inbox to collect that data and put it into the folder that has all of the elements for this particular order. So then when we actually send it off to the printer or do it ourselves, it's all right there. Some type of system for that. So that's what we mean when we talk about order flow. That's just one piece of the puzzle, but it's something to consider, even if you're not going to have 20 or 30 or 40, even if you're only going to have 10, because you're going to have more than you are used to. I guess that's the point. Yeah. So can you handle it with your existing system that you have? Can you handle it? That's the question.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Travis brought up a good point. It might be time to hire a VA. And you might be wondering, if you're new to the show or you're new to the print on demand, you don't know what a VA is, what can they do for you? After you're done listening to episode 16 about order flow, just keep on going to episode 17. We talked about utilizing virtual assistants and how they can be beneficial to you, especially if you're not doing any production yourself, you're just drop shipping. And you have to fulfill that kind of custom artwork stuff. VAs are lifesavers. We use them all the time. So be sure to check that out. Travis, the next thing that we want to talk about for Q4, and it's something that is definitely timely, just, in culture right now and in our country, what's happening. But pricing, talk a little bit about pricing, because there's lots of things, not just how much are you charging, but there's a lot of other stuff as far as pricing that you can unpack that you need to be aware of and conscious of headed into Q4.
Yeah, the first thing that you should know, and you can take this how you will, but in Q4, in kind of that Christmas gift giving, holiday gift giving season, people will pay more for gifts. They will. So if you choose, you can raise your prices, and I have no problem with that. Some people may call me greedy or whatever, or an opportunist. I don't care what you call me. Sure. I'm going to make more money than you. I mean, and so again, to each their own, and I respect you if you don't want to do that too. That's totally fine, and I totally understand that side of the coin. Just a quick aside, like a little story. A couple years ago, I can't remember how much I was pricing coffee mugs, but I think I was pricing them at like $14.99 and $17.99 for 15s or something like that. Yeah. And now, to be fair, the price of the coffee mugs has gone up, and this is all free shipping prices. The cost of the coffee mugs has gone up. The cost of the shipping has gone a lot up since I was, first starting. First class I used to be able to ship a mug like close to $4, and now it's, it doesn't go anywhere from less than $5.50, pretty much. And in Q4, it's probably going to be closer to $6 because of that extra 30 cents. But I remember trying something on a few of my best sellers, and I think it was like December 10th or December 8th or something like that. I shot them up to like $25 for an 11 ounce from $15 basically. And I did not slow down selling them. There was no difference in, the 7th of December to the 8th of December when I raised the prices. And so that taught me something, that people will pay more in Q4. Now, I also did a similar experiment after Q4 one year when I had priced them up. I just left them. and I wanted to see how long that kind of pricing would work. And I still did pretty good. And so now I'm making pretty good margins. I don't feel necessarily that I'm going to raise my prices this year. I may again, like on the 10th or something like that. But anyway, that's just kind of a story about where what I've learned going through multiple quarter fours and multiple holiday seasons. But the question is, beyond just kind of willy-nilly, hey, I'm going to raise my prices because I want to make more money. You've got to back into that with thinking about like the rising costs of goods. Like I alluded to, coffee mugs, t-shirts, apparel, all of these things they're costing more. With the whole crisis with the shipping stuff and all of these things coming over, and there's, hundreds, if not thousands of ships literally waiting to just dock in LA's port. And, they're saying, well, there's not enough truckers to come and get the stuff to move it out of the way so the next ship can come in and offload their goods. And, and then on the other side of it, there's all of these, tons and tons of goods waiting to be shipped in China. And what's happening is, opportunity for the shipping companies, and they're really raising their rates, which then obviously that passes on to us. And you all know this. I mean, it's basic inflation stuff that's going on. So there's a rising cost of goods. Have you considered that? And have you adjusted your prices? When was the last time you did the numbers? In our checkup, this is part of it. Go in, do your numbers, figure out how much the cost of goods actually is. How much does it cost for that poly bag if you're doing it yourself, you're going to put the shirt in, or that box, those shipping supplies? How much is it going to cost to actually ship it to your customer? Has it gone up? If you're a drop shipper, has your supplier raised their prices? How does that affect your margin? And do you need to raise your prices as a result? Are these increases being reflected in your pricing? In fact, just today, I went through a bunch of my stuff in my Amazon account, and I have what's called a repricer, which automatically kind of lowers and, raises the price based on other sellers jumping on to my listings. There's a whole nother episode. People literally, I make a listing, put a great, we talked about watermarks. Well, that would be great. If we should probably put watermarks on our stuff, because people will jump on our listing and then totally tank the price. And so I have a repricer that goes down with that. And so I was going to those listings that had been kind of moved, and for some reason the repricer wasn't pushing them back up. So I just went in and spent, a good hour just going through different listings and looking, oh, there's no one else on this listing, I'm going to raise my price back up. So it's a good checkup for you to see if you're those increases that we're seeing as a nation and as a business owner, if they're actually reflected in your pricing of your goods for sale on these different marketplaces.
Yeah, that's huge. That's a huge thing to keep in mind. And again, you talked about shipping. I know we talked about in a previous episode, USPS has already raised their prices for Q4 this month. And we all know what that means. We all know that means that they'll never come back down. They just kind of use Q4 as a reason to increase, and then they just leave them. Kind of like those old 2 a.m. infomercials about set it and forget it. Well, that's typically what they do. But you just got to make sure that you know about that, because soon you'll be going along and wondering why your boat is taking on water. Well, there's some holes that could potentially, result in some leaks. And that's definitely one of them. If you're not paying attention to where the pricing is, you could think you're making money, but in the end, you're actually not, because you didn't pay attention to how the donuts were made, for lack of a better term. So moving on to the third thing here, if you're doing your own fulfillment, do you have enough product or shipping supplies? This is another thing to be very cognizant of and kind of forecast for, again, because as this volume increases, you're going to run through those materials a lot quicker. Poly bags, packing tape, labels, just the stuff like sublimation tape and ink and all of this stuff, pre-treat, all of that stuff that you're needing to take account for, that goes into the production of your actual product. And if you don't have enough, do you have a system or a flow for ordering those things before they run out. Because again, I can't tell you from experience, I'm sure Travis can tell you too, where you thought you had another thing of pre-treat or another thing of labels, and all of a sudden you're like, oh crap, we're out and we don't have any on the way. And then you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. How do you ship label? How do you ship packages without shipping labels? And you figure those things out. So apart from that as well, do you have backups if something were to happen?
Right.
Travis, we were talking about our, the SG400s, the sublimation printers. You're talking about getting another one just for a backup, because if a machine goes down, do you have a contingency plan to still be able to produce and keep on pace with deadlines? Because those things are unforeseen. Print heads can go out, or things can happen that you can't plan for, but you can plan how you react and how you have a contingency plan. Travis just added, to the listener, Travis just added bubble wrap to the list of supplies. I feel, do you have a bubble wrap shortage story, Travis, to share?
Oh my gosh. I'll tell you, last year I bought more bubble wrap from people that I wasn't like a customer for before.
Sure.
Before I ran out of bubble wrap. I mean, I was calling around finding. Yeah, I was calling around all over the place saying, "Hey, I need this. Do you have any of this?" And it was amazing. I was paying, almost twice as much as I was from my normal supplier, because he just ran out, and I hadn't, pre-planned. So this year we're going to order a lot more, and we've already been in conversations with him. But I mean, that's just one example. And the other thing about the bubble wrap was it wasn't just like, oh crap, we need bubble wrap, so I have to go find it, or call people and find out where I can get it. I had to physically go to their places all around Denver and pick it up and bring it, because they didn't have delivery like my other guy does. So it not only took, extra cash, it took extra time, because I wasn't ready for the demand that it took. So that's my bubble wrap story.
Yes. So, and there's another common thread here, and it's an old saying, right? Those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So if you ran out of bubble wrap last Q4, if you ran out of mug boxes last Q4, and you run out again this Q4, you're not paying attention. And so think about those things that now are funny anecdotes to share at parties and with people in the industry. Like, man, that bubble wrap, I ran around Denver. But there's something that Travis obviously has gleaned from, and this year he's going to have a stockpile of bubble wrap. It's going to look like a psych ward, just bubble wrap. You can go run into walls at Travis's shop here shortly, because he's going to stockpile on bubble wrap because he learned from last year. So while those things are funny and kind of great stories to tell now, don't forget the lesson that you learned that resulted in that story. So if someone's not doing production in-house, though, Travis, if they're drop shippers, what's something that's kind of the equivalent, like flip side of the same coin for them?
I would say that, if you are a drop shipper, the equivalent for you is to maybe have some kind of backup vendors prepared in case something happens that's unforeseen with your main vendor. So if your, main vendor is Pritify or Pritful, maybe figure out how you can, if you needed to, get some orders to the other one, or maybe find somebody like me or Josiah that could potentially help you out. Although I will say, as a fulfillment, company, I don't think I would take on a new client in the middle of December, so, you might want to reach out to somebody like me or Josiah, earlier rather than later to get everything set up. If you did need us later on, and just slide into our workflow, as opposed to kind of being, a whole new customer in the middle of the busiest time of year. But I would think that that's pretty dang important. Maybe your what if your supplier runs out of something? What if your supplier, starts getting, what if we have another Q4 like last year? Maybe some of those suppliers aren't going to have learned from last year's woes, and they're not preparing in the way that, and you don't know this. And the other thing is that a lot of these places, you're not going to know it until it's way too late. So you need to have an immediate switch that you can switch to get somebody else, use a Guten or a, whoever else. There's a lot of opportunity or a lot of options out there, but I would have it ready to go. I talked the other week about if you are using these companies, they make it easier to be kind of, I don't mean this as a slam, but they make it easier to be lazy with your management of your data. And so maybe it's time to like really put all that data in a way that you can get to it easily. So if you do have to switch, it's all right there, and you're not digging through emails and digging through folders and trying to figure out stuff, but it's all like on a sheet in one place with links to different things. And you can really, make that switch as painless as you possibly can, because it's already going to be really painful if you have to in the middle of Q4.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that is a good equivalent of, for a drop shipper, just making sure that no matter what happens, you have a backup plan to get that product to your customer through another provider, another vendor. Another thing that you can consider for Q4 that maybe you haven't is FBAing some of your best sellers, right? And Travis, you and I do a lot of, merchant fulfilled or merchant fulfilled prime. But the cool thing about FBA is if you take, the data from the last year and look at what your best sellers have been, what moves the best, that provides you kind of proof of concept for you to go ahead and send a lot of quantity. Mugs are a lot easier to do. Of course, T-shirts,
too many variations,
size, color, that kind of stuff could get crazy. But coffee mugs, for example, are really easy to FBA in because you can just send case packs or whatever quantity you want into Amazon. It results in you getting the little Prime check badge that people often filter. I know I do when I'm shopping. I hit the Prime filter because I just want what's Prime to be in front of me.
Right.
But then you send it into Amazon, and Amazon handles the fulfillment to the customer on your behalf. So another episode back in the archives, I'm just going to start saying that all the time, in the archives. Episode 6 of the Print on Demand cast, selling on Amazon.com. We go into, what fulfillment by Amazon FBA means, the process, that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that, if you are, if you have the means and are producing at least mugs in house, it's a good way to think of doing that. That can increase your sales, but also take off some of the stress of trying to drop ship them individually to each customer when Amazon can kind of handle the lion's share of shipping it. And if a mug arrives broken and it's FBA, guess whose fault it's not? So some things to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think with Amazon, we were just looking through some of the episode numbers before we pressed record, and it seems like a lot of the Etsy episodes are more popular than other episodes, specifically Amazon. And I don't think it's any shock for the listeners that Amazon's kind of it's my sweet spot. And I think it is for you too, compared to Etsy. I know your wife has a really successful Etsy store as well.
We got to get her, guys. If you're in the Facebook group or whatever, just tag Madeline Cifuentes and tell her to come on the show and talk about Etsy, because we're trying to get her to come on here and chat about Etsy.
It'd be awesome.
So I need all of you to really just post it'd be great to hear Josiah's wife's story, blah, blah, and I'm going to just screenshot and bombard her during the day with these people who want. She's in the other room. 1 second. Madeline, you really need to come on the podcast and talk about Etsy. I'm recording what we just talked about it right now. So you're live on the air, by the way. What do you mean? Okay, we'll talk later. So anyway, do what I ask, people of the podcast, and I'll make sure this happens sooner rather than later. Anyway, Travis, you were saying.
Well, I was just saying that it seems like there's a lot of people that are really excited about Etsy in the group, which I don't blame them. But I don't want Etsy seems to be a little bit, is pretty low hanging fruit. Amazon seems, and I think at least in our minds, sometimes it can seem like it's harder or more difficult. And
Sure.
You may be right. But I don't think that should keep you from really looking into it.
Sure.
There's not as many hoops as you think there are. If you're already selling on Etsy, there's really no reason that you shouldn't also be selling on Amazon. If nothing else, just merchant fulfilled even.
Sure.
But then FBA, I will tell you what, you will sell 4 to 5 times the amount of products on an FBA listing than you will an FBM listing. And fulfilled by Amazon is FBA, fulfilled by merchant is FBM. And I'll tell you, man, it is worth the pain of figuring it out and 100%. Going through it, especially as we're going into the holiday gift giving season, because I'm literally sending thousands of products to Amazon, and I don't think I'm sending enough, and so that's just the cold hard truth, guys. If you're sleeping on Amazon,
wake up.
Yeah. And maybe it's not for this Q4. Maybe it is a little too late to kind of jump on that ship.
Sure.
But man, 2022, you need to really strongly consider it. And if you need help, reach out to us. We can definitely help you. So there, I said my piece on the
100%.
The FBA part.
Yes. No, I completely agree. And for those listening, just to give you some kind of context, before Travis and I were in the print industry, before we had the idea of bringing you the gold standard of print on demand podcast information, the print on demand cast, we, made our bones, made our living selling on Amazon through FBA, not just mugs, but almost literally anything we could find at a Sam's Club. We have sourcing trips and stories of sitting at an old Chicago playing trivia until that one old Chicago was number 1 on the trivia list. I don't know if you remember that, Travis, but
I do.
We did that. Yes. So we've got lots of experience in this and understanding the power of FBA's or of Amazon's FBA program to help increase sales in general and sell through the things that we sent in. So I think some of that is like just our understanding and our passion for FBA is huge if you want to really quickly, multiply your volume, like Travis said, by 3 or 4 times what you're doing on a merchant fulfilled listing. So if you are selling on Amazon and aren't doing FBA yet, look into it. If you're not on the Amazon platform, and like Travis said, you're on Etsy, they're very similar. There's some nuances and differences between each platform, but you might as well get your content on as many platforms as you can find, because the more revenue streams you have coming in, not only are you making more money, but you're getting the most value out of those assets that you're already listing for sale. You might as well relist them on other platforms. So it definitely is worth the pain of going through and learning that learning curve of those different e-commerce platforms.
Yeah, totally. So the last one that we've got for you guys.
What's the last one, Travis?
The last one really is just kind of a checkup on your accounting. We are not accountants, and so please consult your tax professional / all of that stuff.
Yes.
But there are some basic bookkeeping things that you just want to make sure as you're going into a season where you're going to sell more that you've got it figured out, and you need some way to know, how much you're making versus how much you're spending. And then, for instance, your cost of goods, like what does it cost? We talked about it. What does it cost for that product? How much does it cost to ship? Where are you going to put the shipping? Is it a separate line item? Or are you going to include that in the cost of goods? Because there's different kind of streams in the accounting world that they argue for either one. Other expenses, you subscribe to Merchant Informer, or you subscribe to this thing or that thing. Can you write off your internet because you're needing to do that? If you're a drop shipper, can you write off portion of your home office on your taxes? All of these things are stuff that you really need to kind of gather all of your questions, write them all down, all of those things I've just said, and then make sure that you've got the how much you sold versus, and how many it was and what it cost you, and all of that data somewhere. If it's it's not I use Xero.com, Xero, as my accounting software or my bookkeeping software. Some people use QuickBooks. There's other things out there. You can hire it out. But you can also do it if you're just starting with you don't have a whole lot of transactions. You can figure it out with your bank statement and a Google sheet. Then take that and make an appointment now for before the end of the year with your CPA. Go in and have that list of questions, have that Google sheet or that, login for your QuickBooks or your Xero or whatever, and then talk to him about, hey, what's the best way that I can limit my tax liability for 2021 going, have to file in 2022. That's really important. As a business owner, that's really important to have that all figured out, and so those are a couple of things that you want to really kind of make sure you're ready for, because before you know it, it's going to be at the end of 2021. And you need to have all that figured out before the end. So, make the plan now, schedule the appointment now. Hey, on December 20th, I want to meet with you. You won't have all of the stuff figured out, but you'll have a good idea. Well, I'm probably going to close the year about this much, and this is probably where I'm going to be, because you only got another 10 or 11 days in the year. And then you can get some good advice for, do you need to buy some more stuff because you're going to be taxed? You need to buy another printer because you made so much money that you're going to be taxed, or do you need to defer some of those expenses because you lost money, and defer them to next year, or what, that big purchase you made, or what? I mean, that's what a CPA is for. I'm not giving you advice. I'm just saying, get somebody that knows what they're talking about, that can help you keep more money in your pocket instead of, giving it to Uncle Sam.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't need any more money. So that's another one of those things too. You might think, end of year taxes. Whatever, CPA, blah, blah, blah. So, but it's one of those things, again, like cost of goods, which we talked about here, that can slowly result in water coming onto your boat because you weren't paying attention to those costs. You weren't paying attention to those things. And, suddenly you're shin deep in water and the boat's about to sink. Travis, anything else before we wrap up this kind of checkup, this holiday rush checkup?
No, I think what we're going to do at some point, probably the same day this comes out, we're going to put a post in the Facebook group, like a poll, and ask what channels you guys sell on. And this will give us, it'll help us prove our hunches, I guess, that, Etsy's probably number one. I don't know. Well, we'll see. And if there's other, I'm going to probably put Etsy up there, eBay up there, Amazon up there, Walmart up there, Shopify up there. And then if there's some other ones that you need to write in, by all means do that. Maybe Merch by Amazon, those types of things. And we'll just kind of see what percentage. Maybe we'll do two polls. We'll do one poll for actual physical products and one poll for, the royalty based stuff.
Sure.
But be sure to look out for that and submit your vote. Tell us where you're selling, because that'll help us kind of create content and move it forward.
Yeah, 100%. And the only way to submit answers on that poll is printondemancast.com/Facebook. If you are new to the podcast, it's probably the first or second time you've heard me say this. If you've been a long-time listener, I apologize. But printondemancast.com/Facebook is the place. It's more than just, I think, for Travis and I, a place to, of course, let you know the episodes and all the new stuff and promote. But it really was, the impetus behind it was to build a community of people that can talk and help and share ideas and kind of help be a catalyst for good, helpful dialogue and creative ideas. So again, printondemancast.com/Facebook is the place to go and check out that poll. Let us know the platforms that you're selling on and the products that you're selling on those platforms. If social media isn't your thing, I completely understand that. But you can also email us then, at Print on Demand Cast is where you can also send us an email. Let us know what platforms you sell on, so on and so forth. We still want to know your answers. So if social media is not your thing, please do that as well. Again, if you're listening to this on the Apple Podcast app, please take time, leave us a 5-star rating. You don't have to put a comment, but if you do, bonus points. But it helps this podcast get in front of the right people, helps the algorithm, and helps more people discover the content and insight that you've been enjoying for the last almost a year and a half of the Print on Demand Cast. And we thank you guys so much for being with us through the entirety of this journey. So, Travis, anything else before we wrap this thing up, put a bow on it, and send it home?
I don't think so. Just glad we could help you guys with your checkup.
Yes, we will. Let us tell you what in the Facebook group as well. Tell us how you think you did on your yearly physical checkup.
Same thing.
That was whatever. So, but let us know how you think you did, and we want to hear your feedback on that poll as well. So, until next time, for Travis, I'm Josiah. We'll see you right here next week on the Print on Demand Cast.
See ya.
Hey, babe. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Print on Demand Cast. We hope you enjoyed the Totally Tubular Show. If you've got a question or a suggestion for the show, send Travis and Josiah an email at info@printondemandcast.com. Want to be wicked nice? Take a minute to rate and review the show on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe now so you don't miss next week's episode. See you next time, for sure.